The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
So a lot to talk about, as you could talk transfer portal pretty much each and every day. And now predictions are coming in, including mine. So where do you think the Vols end up at the end of 2024? Obviously a big year, Caleb. Going to see some high predictions. I'm curious what you think of the early predictions that are coming out somewhere in the teens. I guess I thought you would see maybe one or two go a little bit higher. Your thoughts on what you're seeing so far?
Yeah, I'm shocked. I think the most shocking part is the predictions for this year are low for next year, are lower than they were going into this past year. Even though I think those of us tied into the program knew that next year was always going to have the better team. That was the plan from the start, was for 2024 to be the team where everything came together and this be a transition year. So we see it. I would have thought other people saw it. We'll see how Vegas sees it over the summer, because the only people that do as good a reporting as us tied to the program is Vegas.
Usually so. Also, I want to discuss a couple of coaches that some people seem to think on social media should be on the hot seat. One, I don't understand at all. The other, I understand an argument for. Tennessee picks up a commitment to. Tell us about Jalen McMurray while we get Jimmy Hyams connected and dig into a couple of these things, including those preseason expectations. But Tennessee continues to move in recruiting, whether it be the transfer portal or whether it be high school recruiting. They continue to seem to have that constant flow of news, which is good for a recruiting football program. Yeah,
Jalen McMurray, and I will get into I'll say this for as we get deeper into the show, but I'll just give you guys some exterior insight into him. He's a Temple transfer, 2-year starter, redshirt sophomore. He's been a college football player for 3 years. So he redshirted 1 year, started the last 2, missed 1 game last year due to injury, but he does bring experience to the program. However, there are I'm a lot more critical of this, shall we say, pickup than I think a lot of other Tennessee people covering the program might be. And I'll get into that.
Well, we shall discuss. Joined by Jimmy Hyams now. Love visiting with Jimmy, longtime SEC writer, columnist, formerly with the Sports Animal. Jim, how are you, sir?
Doing fine, Dave. How are you and Caleb?
We're doing well, It's getting to that point where you start to look at the upcoming season and make these preseason predictions. So if I were to come up to you, as I'm sure people do, and say, Jimmy, how are the Vols going to do in 2024? What would you say at this point?
I've got them at 8-4. Now, I reserve the right to change that because I don't know what the roster is going to look like next week, maybe even tomorrow. Who knows with the transfer portal. But I've got them at 8-4. I think they lose to Alabama and Georgia and at Oklahoma. And then I think somebody else gets them. So I'm at 8-4. If I were to lean in a direction, I'd go 9-3. But that's where I am with Tennessee for next year.
Okay. So I purposefully came into this conversation not asking Caleb where he stood on it. So I want to ask you right now, Caleb, where are you? You can only win 12 games, I believe, maybe 13.
In the regular season, I've got them 11-1. And if they go 8-4, Jimmy, Josh Heupel, it's time to axe him, because I don't know how they're going to do any better than they're going to do in 2024 in the future under Josh Heupel. I think 2024 is the max year, and if they go 8-4, they're not going to be able to recruit for the future because Heupel will be selling a stagnant program at that point that looks a lot like Auburn's program under Gus Malzahn looked in the second half of the 2010s.
So who's the loss to?
I think they'll lose to Alabama or Georgia, but I don't think they'll lose both.
Okay.
And I think they run the table everywhere else.
Jim, I am surprised when you have Tennessee at 8 wins that you're at 8. I thought you might be at 9 and 10. Should Tennessee fans, if they end up at 8 wins, be disappointed over that now that you would be in year 4? If that's right, year 4?
Yeah, they would be disappointed, just like I think they were disappointed that they won 8 games this past year. So I think there was a little disappointment with this record after an 11-win season. I had them winning 9 games going into last season. So I missed by 1. I actually thought they would beat Florida, and my reasoning was, and people said, oh, well, they never beat Florida at Florida. It's also the first time I can ever remember where Tennessee had 19 senior starters and Florida had 2. That was the reason I took Tennessee to beat Florida. And Tennessee played poorly at Florida. They played poorly on offense or defense. And I know that there are a lot of people that think, well, if Nico Iamaleava had been the quarterback, they'd have won 10 games this past year. I don't – there's not one game on the schedule that I can look at and say they'd have won it if Nico was quarterback. So I disagree with that mindset. I think Nico's really good, but I also have right now – I have questions about his supporting cast. And I think it needs to be better at receiver, and they need more depth at running back. And I don't think their offensive line right now is very good. I think it's very average.
Jimmy, I want to address that because you did talk about Nico's supporting cast in an article we wrote recently, and I guess that's why you're worried about the 8-4 season. But isn't it also fair to say that that was a makeshift supporting cast in the Citrus Bowl? That, I mean, the offensive line is not going to look like that next year. Cooper Mays is coming back. We assume Javonte Spraggins is coming back, and Javonte Spraggins wasn't in that game. And the receiving core is going to be totally different with Brew McCoy coming back, Mike Matthews, Chris Brazzell, Braylon Staley. So taking that into account, is it that, like, in terms of his supporting cast, is it the only real concern from that game the fact that Dylan Sampson is the most useless pass blocker in the history of pass blocking running backs?
Well, there was another running back a couple of years ago that wasn't very good at it either, and his name was Jalen Wright. He ended up being pretty good. So Dylan Sampson as a pass blocker is not a finished product. That's about as nice way as I can say it. Sampson's a really good running back. He's a very good player, and he can be a difference maker. Obviously, he does need to learn how to pass protect a little bit better. Maybe you coach around that a little bit. I think the receiving core has a chance to be pretty good, but there's a lot of speculation with that. I think Brew McCoy is really good. I don't think he's a first-round draft pick, but I think he's a good receiver. I think that Matthews has a chance to be really good if he's a 5-star. They need Thornton to play like they hoped he would. They think the Tulane transfer, Brazzell, 44 catches last year, but we thought Thornton was going to be a big impact player right away. So to me, there's just a lot of unproven commodities at the receiver core. I think Squirrel White is a really good complementary receiver. He's not a number 1 guy. They don't have anybody that scares me like Jalen Hyatt or Cedric Tillman on this roster.
Looking at your story that's on offthehooksports.com right now, grading Tennessee quarterback Nico's on-field support. If there were 3 guys that you could pull off this roster or that are coming in that you think are most likely to elevate their play by a step that you could point to and say, that could change the way I feel about the skill position players, who might those 3 guys be?
The current players or incoming players?
It can be both. If you think somebody's that good coming in, but I would think most of them would be current to some extent.
Well, one of them that I think McCoy's really good. I think Squirrel White is a good receiver. The rest of the receivers that are returning didn't really impress me much. So I would say either Brazzell or Matthews. That would be one. At the offensive line position, right now, Spraggins would be one of them. And he's coming off a torn MCL, but he would be one of them because they need to make sure that the offensive line is fortified. They need to make sure that they're good up front to protect Nico. The other one, and Caleb might like this one, Cam Seldon. I do not think,
Really?
Yeah, I don't think.
Trent Richardson vision.
The reason I say that is Tennessee had a 3-headed monster at running back last year with Wright, with Small, with Sampson. Well, right now it's only Sampson, unless Seldon's really good. Seldon also could be your short yardage running back. He's big enough, he's strong enough to do that. So he needs to be a really good player And I like Sampson a lot. Don't get me wrong, but you can't go into this league with one running back, especially the way Tennessee runs its offense. So I think Selden's would be a key to this team.
Jimmy, did you? I don't. You may not have because it was a giant internet meme in like 2015. But did you ever see that freeze frame of an internet picture of Trent Richardson with the Raiders when there's a giant hole on the right and then he runs right to the left into the crowd of everybody? And that was Cam Selden on that 3rd and 1 against Iowa last week. There was a giant hole on one side, and he took the exact opposite side. And I'm sorry, I look at that, I'm like, if you can't see that hole, can you ever develop into a decent running back?
Of course you can. You can't look at one play and then throw somebody in the trash can.
I can.
Come on.
I can.
You shouldn't. You shouldn't.
You should never miss on that play.
Portions of the program brought to you by Andy Mason, AndyMasonRealEstate.com. About 40 years in that office of handling real estate. Best service, no question about it. Best prices in the biz. Andy Mason, AndyMasonRealEstate.com. When I ask you about a couple of Tennessee coaches, I hear the conversations on Twitter, or I read them, I should say. What do you think about those that are overly critical or very critical, I should say, of Willie Martinez?
I don't think Willie Martinez has done a real good job. I don't know what the overly critical part is because I don't see all of that. But to me, the position that was, in my opinion, the worst coach position on Tennessee's team last year was in the secondary. And his contract runs out. So if Tennessee makes a change, I think it'll be with Martinez. Personally, I like the guy. I've had an interaction with him. But I just think the secondary is not very good. And I think there's enough talent back there to be better than what they were. And so now we're seeing their players go to Ole Miss or to Louisville, wherever. They're ending up with somebody. It's not like they're ended up with Power 5 schools. So I don't think that was a well-coached group, and I think they need an upgrade there.
Well, Jimmy, wow, me and you just in the morning, we're going at each other. We're disagreeing on everything, but
I feel good about that.
Yeah. So I always had reservations of Willie Martinez because I had reservations of anybody that was ever tied to Butch Jones's staff at Tennessee in the 2010s. So like that alone made me not the biggest fan. But again, at the same time, that was more Butch Jones bringing in Bob Shoop, who didn't even try to see if Bob Shoop had chemistry with the rest of the staff. And I can't get into that. But anyways, Willie Martinez, I wanted to play off that a little bit just to say, isn't it true that his hands have been a little bit tied with the talent in the secondary? Because I'm not so sure these guys that left are as good as we think they are. I think Lane Kiffin is just desperately throwing money at anybody he can get, and he's got Ole Miss. He's got a big NIL collective this offseason because Ole Miss has saved it for 3 years. And he's taken whoever he can get to see if he can build a title team. This defense is never going to be that appealing to elite defensive backs because the system, the offensive scheme, and the way the team is designed is going to be one that always puts pressure on defensive backs. So they have to play off a lead. And quite honestly, isn't it fair to say this past year, even though the offense was good, Joe Milton didn't get them the lead they usually need to get to be able to play well and effective?
I don't think it has anything to do with the offense. Nothing. You either guard somebody or you don't. So, and even against Iowa, you look at it and you say, boy, Iowa didn't throw for very many yards. Well, one reason they didn't is they had 3 passes dropped by receivers that were wide open. That's not good secondary play. It had nothing to do with the offense. So I don't see a correlation between those two. I don't think the defensive backs did a good job. I don't think they always tackle well. I think they left receivers open too often. So I just didn't think that the second and you can't blame it on lack of a pass rush. Tennessee they were in the top 3 in the league in sacks and pressures of the quarterback. So it's not that. I just don't think they were as good as they need to be.
So as you look back over these past couple of years, talking with Jimmy Hyams about potential coaching changes if they're out there. We all know Willie Martinez, his contract is up after this year. I think people have said repeatedly that it's talent, but you don't seem to think that. If you look back over Martinez's time, do you think it's more talent, coaching, or a little bit of both?
I think it's a bit of both, but I think it's more coaching. Now, look, don't get me wrong. I don't think Tennessee had a bunch of all SEC players back there. But I remember before the season, Caleb, you thought Matthews was going to have a huge impact on this secondary, right? Well, what did he do? Well, why not? Was that because Matthews wasn't as good as we thought? Or was he not well coached? Or they couldn't figure out how to coach him into being able to play that position? I think Matthews has talent. I think Ricky Gibson has talent. Now, and I think some of the other defensive backs, I think Kamal Haddon had some talent. Tamari McDonald is a decent player. And I'm, again, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying they had a bunch of all-stars back there. I'm just saying that based on the talent that they had, and the talent was average, but based on the talent that they had, I still think they underachieved.
Let me ask you this. We know Willie Martinez brings more to the table than whatever his coaching is, and that is recruiting.
Right.
So if Tennessee did make a change, how significant would that be on the recruiting trail and his ties and what he has?
Well, it doesn't affect this class, obviously. Okay. So going down the road, I don't know how – look, he's a good recruiter, so it could have an impact. And then you get down to the argument, would you rather have an average coach and really good players or really good coach and average players? Now, Heupel has taken what was considered to be a lot of average players on offense and done really well with them, right? So there's that debate out there. But I would rather have a guy that's a really good coach and maybe an average recruiter, because guess what? You got 9 other people on that staff that can recruit. You're not the only one, but you're the only one that's coaching those defensive backs. So I would go with a really good coach who's an average recruiter, because other recruiters on the staff can help you.
But Jimmy, remember, Ed Orgeron won a national championship just because he had players. If Ed Orgeron can win a national championship with players, anybody can win with players.
Hey, Joe Brady won that national championship, right?
That's fair.
Yeah, that Ed got out of the. Ed was smart enough to get out of the way.
Well, the other one that gets that has gotten thrown in there in some of these Twitter conversations is Joey Halzle. I mean, this to me seems really silly. Here he is, just stepping into this role in this past off season. But ultimately, this is Josh Heupel's offense. I mean, there's nothing that Joey Halzle, I believe, could bring to the table to say that he's a good or bad coach in year number 1, Jimmy, because it's all Heupel, right?
I think it's all Heupel. It's Heupel's offense. It was Heupel's offense when he was at Missouri. It was his offense at Central Florida. He turned over some of the reins to Alex Golesh. Golesh's last year at Tennessee. But this is Heupel's offense. So to me, if you got to complain about the offense, you dial up the head coach, not Halzle. So and that's my opinion. Now, do I think they might have missed Golesh as far as some game planning? Maybe he saw something in a scheme that would work that he passed on to Josh Heupel. Maybe he saw some weaknesses in the defense. Maybe their linebackers couldn't cover a wheel route, whatever it was. I think he was pretty good at that. I don't know if Halzle is as good at picking that up. But as far as game day and play calling, to me, that's Heupel.
Agreed. And I don't know really how to dissect how much anybody in that offensive coordinator position might have an impact. I mean, he could have a huge, monstrous impact or not. I'm curious, as the Cutcliffe and Fulmer days unfolded a little bit before my time, when did you start to realize that, hey, the Cutcliffe guy is a pretty good offensive mind?
When did I realize that? Jeez, that's a hard question. I would say pretty early, but here's a part of that. So when he took over as offensive coordinator, who were his quarterbacks? Heath Shuler and Peyton Manning. So Caleb and I would have looked really good as an offensive coordinator with those guys. But I do think he was good. Here's the thing. And then I even had more respect for Cutcliffe after Peyton Manning left. Why? Because he had to coach a completely different style of quarterback. And he got a lot out of T. Martin, and they won a national championship. So that really impressed me that Cutcliffe – and by the way, Shuler was a good runner too. So they had one system for Shuler, another system for Manning, another system for Martin. That tells me you're a hell of a coach if you can take 3 different quarterbacks like that and win at a high level. Now, as far as the Heupel thing, I do think he's really good, but I'll also say that he's not necessarily perfect because remember, they went with Joe Milton over Hendon Hooker to start the 2021 season. And I think we would all agree that was not the correct decision.
Yeah, I've been very critical of Heupel from the start. I think that has more to do with Heupel's arrogance than it does anything else because Heupel was like, I'm the one who signed Joe Milton, so therefore I am the one who I obviously am the smartest person in the room. And since I didn't pick Hendon Hooker, I'm going to go with Joe Milton. So I've been very critical of him for that. Jimmy, I would say that it's, to your point, the people mad at Halzle and who think it was Golish calling this. Golish wasn't there when Josh Heupel went undefeated at UCF in 2018, and he wasn't there when Josh Heupel was at UCF in 2019. Jeff Levy was the offensive coordinator. Also, Josh Heupel himself was the offensive coordinator at Missouri in 2016 and 2017 when Drew Lock was setting all these records. This is his offense. This is specifically his offense. So I'm with you on that.
Well, and the other part of that is the only year, and there's a debate about this, but Heupel's first year, he called the plays. The second year, Golish was much more involved in play calling. Now, there's a debate about how much he did or didn't call the plays. I think he was much more involved. But so that's the only time that Heupel has not been his own play caller, in my opinion, based on what I've seen.
Jimmy, I want to ask you this question. Tennessee is the final ratings, both AP and coaches came in. Tennessee is in the teens. If I would have told you the moment that Josh Heupel was hired, they'll be in the teens in 2024, you would have said about that program what?
If they'd have been in the teens in the 2020s in the rankings?
Or 2024?
2024.
2023. It's the 2023 season.
Right. But yes, headed into the 2024 season. Excuse me. Go ahead.
I would have said he would have done a remarkable job. Look, to get to 11 wins the previous year was a tremendous job. But you also have to remember what he inherited. What a mess that Pruitt left him. So for him to win 7 and then 11 and then 9 games, to me, is a tremendous job that he has done. Do I agree with all the decisions he's made? No. But, gosh, he's made an awful lot of right decisions. And so I think for them to be in this position, I could have seen Tennessee the first 2 years under Heupel not even making a bowl game with what he was left. But he also comes in and he finds Cedric Tillman, who absolutely did nothing for 3 years. I had no clue he had any talent. I'm thinking that's one of the guys you don't want to keep around. He had 8 catches in 3 years. Then he becomes an all-SEC player and a third-round draft pick. So I think he's done a remarkable job. The players like playing for him. He's got a really fun offense to watch. He's scoring a lot of points. They'll score more points with Nico next year, by the way, than they did this past year with Joe Milton. But I think I would say he's done a remarkable job to get him to this point of the where the program is.
Speaking of, and give me 1 second, Caleb, for those that have questioned some of the play calling that Tennessee has used with Joe Milton that was way different than Hendon Hooker. Your thoughts on that? Is that a philosophical change, or is that this is what this quarterback can do change?
It's what this quarterback can do change.
I think so too.
You saw a difference in the bowl game, right?
Mm-hmm.
You saw Nico running a couple times. He had a 19-yard run. He had a couple other runs for touchdowns, but they also put him up under center. Not only did they run from the I formation, they ran from the power I formation. But, yeah, the play calling to me was different. You got a different quarterback. I never felt like, and I guess it was after game 4 or 5 that I wrote this, that Joe Milton just simply does not fit this system. Nico does. Hendon Hooker did. And because Nico fits the system, that's why I think the offense will be better next year. Even though I've got a little bit of question marks about his supporting cast, I think the offense will be better because Nico fits the system.
Yeah, I'm going to start with some stats real quick because that's really kind of the center point of the segment that I think is entertaining or intriguing, which is that so Tennessee finished number 17 in the AP and coaches poll this year. For those who don't know, it's the first time since 2003, 2004 that Tennessee finished in the top 20 in back-to-back seasons. It's the first time since 1998-99 that they finished in the top 20 in back-to-back seasons, and one of those seasons was a top 10 finish. So that, Jimmy, what does that say just about, well, here's a question for you. What's more impressive? The fact that Heupel has hit those milestones that I just gave you in year 2 and year 3, or the fact that he just had a winning record his first year at Tennessee, given how much of a disaster he inherited his first year.
I'm going to go with the initial one about the top 10 and being in the top 20 back-to-back years, because you've done it over 2 years instead of 1 year. Although I do think having a winning record his first year was mighty darn impressive. I'll say this. I thought when he came here, because of his offensive mind, his offensive acumen, I thought the offense would be pretty good. I didn't think it would be as good as it was. And I certainly didn't think they would win 7 games and get to a bowl game. But I'll go with the first option that you gave me, because it was done over a 2-year period, not just a 1-year deal.
And if you go back to the teams that Caleb's talking about, those were teams that if they break in the right direction, they're in play for a championship. And I think Tennessee is going to be that program or better for the next 3, 4, 5 years, however long Josh Heupel's the coach.
You're saying there'll be a college football playoff team?
Well, they'll be a contender. They'll be in the conversation, I would think, pretty much each and every year.
Yeah. And see, I've got them just outside the playoff. This obviously with the record that I projected, I don't think they're going to be a playoff team. Caleb obviously does. And I'm going to say that Caleb is all in on Nico, right? That would be the reason you would put Tennessee in that position.
Yes, I've said that Nico to Josh Heupel's system is the equivalent of Tim Tebow to Urban Meyer or Tommy Frazier to Tom Osborne. It's that type of match made in heaven.
Yeah, I think so. And Tebow, by the way, I think it was his sophomore year he won the Heisman Trophy. I don't know that, and maybe Nico can be that good. I like him a lot, but I'm not ready. Like I've seen his name mentioned on Heisman Trophy list already. I'm not there with that. Of course, I'll admit I wasn't there with Tebow his sophomore year either, and he won the darn thing. And I didn't think I didn't know Johnny Manziel was that good, and he won it. So if Nico's
was that a match made in heaven though, or was that just Johnny Manziel being that good?
I think it's Manziel being that good. I think Kevin Sumlin got out of the way and said, "Go do your thing," and Manziel said, "Yeah, I can do it." So yeah. But I do think it's I agree with it's a great match, and I think Nico's going to be an outstanding quarterback. I'm having trouble seeing him getting over Alabama, Georgia, and Oklahoma.
Certainly can understand that. It's whether or not Tennessee is going to be at that point, especially that if they lose a couple of people injury wise. I don't know that they have the depth there. As far as Tennessee and what you predict this year, I think Nico is a guy that can swing it. What, Jimmy? For some people, 2 games.
Yes. Yeah,
Dave's running though. Oh, sorry, Jimmy.
What's that?
You go ahead. Go.
No, yeah, I think if he is that good, they could get to 10 wins if he's that good. Now, again, the defense has to play well. The secondary has to play better than it's played. I do like Tennessee's front. I guess I got to call it front 6 because they play a nickel. So I like Tennessee's front 6. I think they have depth. I think they're good in that area. The secondary has to come through and make some plays. Do I think Tennessee could get to 10 wins? I do. I'm having trouble because with this expansion, I just see 3 teams that I don't think they're going to beat.
Yep.
Jimmy, I have to bring this out to you while me and you have stuck our necks out. You notice Dave is running and hiding and has not given his prediction yet for this year.
It's on the website. No, it's on the website.
He's scared to do it on the show. He's scared to be recorded doing it.
I think Tennessee goes 10-2. Losses to, this is obviously way too early, and we can change this if things happen. But my way too early prediction would be 10-2, losing to Georgia and Alabama, making the playoff, not being in the SEC championship game, winning 1 game, losing 1 game. So that would be 11-3.
An Elite 8, basically.
Yes.
I guess if you call it that.
An Elite 8.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be a heck of a year.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did see where somebody said that the expectation for Tennessee is to be in the college football playoff. I don't think that should be the expectation. I think it should be a goal. I mean, it's tough. I don't see Tennessee as any better than the 5th best team in the SEC. And if you're the 5th best team in the SEC, well, you're borderline as far as you're not going to make the playoff, right? You're going to have to win 10 games in the SEC. You're in the playoff. To win 9, you'd have to have a lot of breaks.
You also are overlooking Tennessee's very favorable and hospitable schedule next year, which is better than most SEC teams. It's easier.
That can be hospitable, but what I'm curious on Jimmy's take is what should the expectations be? So in 5 years, you should make a 12-team playoff X amount of times.
3 or 4.
Yeah, no, we're
and with a generational quarterback, you don't think a year with a generational quarterback could be one of those 3 or 4 years?
Yeah, I think he could be. Depending on how long he stays here, they could be in the playoff 2 of the 3 years that he's here as a starter.
Good stuff. Check it out online. I love the breakdown of the support staff that Nico is going to have. He does need some people to step up. So certainly appreciate, Jimmy, your time as always. Have a fantastic rest of the week, and we will talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys. Y'all have a good day.
We love Jimmy Hyams
being
on the program. Fantastic stuff. When you look at it, if you're going into this offseason with what Tennessee had at running back to end the regular season, and I know guys have to go get paid because they're running backs and they're getting paid by whomever they can, Caleb, because in the NFL, you never get paid. You get that one contract and then they say you're beat up. I understand guys have to go get paid, but I think that's the thing that scares me. You bring it up, Nico getting hurt at some point. Whether it's Dylan Sampson or whoever, those guys weren't as good at pass protection as the other guys that are out the door, or those guys would have been on the field, right?
Absolutely. And that was the problem the whole time. And you know, I cannot believe I'm going to say this. I owe Philip Fulmer a huge apology, a major one. I have gone 25 years of my life thinking that Philip Fulmer and his belief in seniority and unimportant things cost Tennessee that 97 game to Florida because he didn't let Jamal Lewis play because of pass pro.
Hold on a second. Hold on. My phone's blowing up. It's going to be all right. Oh, he texted. He said, "You're okay." He said, tell Caleb to let it go.
The reason I say I owe him an apology is because after watching Dylan Sampson, I never thought a running back could be bad enough in pass blocking that it just messes up every play. But if Jamal Lewis wasn't pass blocking well, given how bad the offensive line already was early in the 97 season, then yeah, I see why he didn't play Jamal Lewis in that against Florida. I don't know how you feel about it, Dave. I don't know how people in the media feel about it. I don't know if you guys feel that he still should have played Jamal Lewis or not. But everything I had heard was that Jamal Lewis wasn't ready with pass pro yet. And that's why he didn't start early.
Almost any question you ask me about Peyton Manning's time at Tennessee can be answered with one statement. One statement, whether we're talking Heisman or whatever. And I'm going to share it in 2 minutes. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker off the Hook Sports.
Sun, sand, and salt water, the beach is a very relaxing place. Unless you wear contacts. Ow! Open your eyes to the best the beach has to offer with LASIK vision correction from Campbell Cunningham Laser Center.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Have you seen the latest TriStar Hats Co. product?
TriStar Hats Co.? What's that?
You know, those really cool hats, shirts, tumblers, and even license plates with 3 stars like the official Tennessee flag and stripes like the American flag. Pretty patriotic if you ask me.
Gotcha. Seen those. Those are cool. Where can I get them?
Simple. TriStarHatsCo.com. And if you order now, there's 10% on any order $50 or more. Plus, use the promo code HOOKED.
With the promo code HOOKED, you get 10% off. That's hooked.
And don't forget free shipping with any order over $50. Stock up at TriStarHatsCo.com. That's TriStarHatsCo.com. tristarhatsco.com. There are plenty of wannabes out there, so make sure you go to tristarhatsco.com for the best quality and customer service.
Will do, and I'll be sure to use the promo code HOOK. That's hooked when I do to save an additional 10% off. tristarhatsco.com.
TriStar Hats Co. is a trademark of TriStar Hats Co. LLC. Any use without express written consent is prohibited.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Objective coverage. Hey, that's new.
If we get caught, we're going to jail.
The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of Off the Hook Sports. YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app.
I'm going to need to see some identification.
Back to Dave Hooker.
Okay, so now I feel bad because I couldn't find my pen. What was the incredible tease I gave right before the break? Because it was a really good...
Peyton Manning, one statement. His whole career can be summed up in one statement.
Business decisions. He made business decisions each and every time.
I know he did. I knew Peyton Manning did, yeah. But was Jamal Lewis pass pro and not being out on the field? That wasn't a business decision. Jamal Lewis didn't know how to pass pro.
But I don't think he would have gone to a school that would have made the other decision. I think he chose the school that had the quarterback guru that would look out for him if something came down to that.
That wanted the running back to pass pro so he wouldn't get hit much. I see what you're saying.
Exactly. So he had that goal in mind. So you and I have the same goal. It's to go over that ridge, not that ridge. So at least we're not fighting which ridge to go over.
But let's be fair on this. Yes, it was a business decision, but just because it was a business decision doesn't mean that, and everything he did for his career was, that doesn't mean he didn't do everything within his power to try to win for the team he was on in that moment. And
who?
Peyton. That doesn't mean that Peyton Manning didn't do everything within his power to help that team win wherever he was on.
Oh, no. I think he's one of the most incredible. You can be an incredible competitor and make great business decisions. As a matter of fact, I would argue that that's what you do. I think he's an incredible competitor. No question there. I definitely think you could be both. Hey, I was curious what you thought of the Mike Vrabel firing. I'm not a Titans guy, but it does tie into something that I wanted to discuss with the Vols. But you are a Titans guy, and when you saw the Vrabel firing, what did you think? What did people on the message board think? Seems like they had a good coach in place. I'm not sure that's where I would have gone.
So I'm going to say from the start, I was critical of Mike Vrabel's loyalty to his friends, but that he promoted the offensive coordinator a lot of times, i.e. the dumbest man in history and Todd Downing, who somehow got a DUI after a plane ride from Green Bay to Nashville at 2 a.m. Sorry, that's another rant. I don't know how that would happen, okay? Because you're not supposed to drink on the team plane. But I will say outside of that, I love Mike Vrabel, the coach. This is blame deflecting by Amy Adams Strunk, who is the typical child of a billionaire family who has never actually had to do anything competent in her life, and you can tell. And because she runs the Titans now. And so she fires John Robinson, who built the Super Bowl contending team that the Titans were. She brings in Rand Carthen, who butchers the franchise, and then tells Mike Vrabel, win with this team that I butchered that is not the roster you work with in 5 years. Mike Vrabel can't win with it because nobody can win with it. And then she steps over Rand Carthen, the general manager, fires Mike Vrabel, and then forces Rand Carthen to hold the press conference on Mike Vrabel's firing. Just an utter level of incompetence. And it's Dave, and you know how I feel. I hate when owners who know nothing about football put their hands all over the football in that moment. It drives me crazy. Has that ever worked in the NFL? Jerry Jones is one thing, but he knew football.
He also got lucky because his best friend knew football more. But when you look at this as a Titans fan, is this better or worse run than what Tennessee went through during their decade of dysfunction, as Mark Nagy called it?
I'm seeing what I might call an equivalent at this point. Amy Adams Strunk is the Titans version of Jimmy Haslam. And you guys know how I feel about him. Children of billionaires, you got to be careful with them because they've never actually they're successful not because of them, but because mommy and daddy gave them everything. And so you always got to question if they're actually good at what they do. And they think they're good at what they do.
Okay, if you believe that, if you believe they have bad ownership and they're going to be average and boring, it's one thing to be drafting exciting quarterbacks that we love to talk about, and they've done that. It's one thing to actually be really good, and they did that. But if they're just going to be one of those franchises that flounders around, isn't that good for the University of Tennessee? Their NIL, what they do, those marketing dollars, go be bad, Titans.
It helps Tennessee because I'm going to be honest, and we need to talk to Slay about this tomorrow, but I think the Titans could be going to the Super Bowl and Tennessee the Vols would still own Nashville in the Middle Tennessee market. And I think that has nothing to do with the Titans. I don't think it's a competition. One, they just have different fan bases a lot of times. A lot of people don't know this. You know it, Dave, which is why what Will Levis said last week was so stupid when he said he implied Titans fans don't like him because they're Vol fans and he went to Kentucky, even though Titans fans' favorite player is Derrick Henry, who went to Alabama. Oh, but only Will Levis could be that dumb, and that's the future of the Titans. So
I just wonder, because it seems to me, and we'll ask Ron Slay about this, but it seems to me that if I'm spending my marketing dollars and there's passion and excitement around that team in orange, and there's hope to win 9 games with that team in blue, that I'm going to put my money with that team in orange. That's just me.
Yeah, you put the money with the team in orange no matter what, though. And even if they're really making it hard on me, if in negotiations they're making it tough. I think UT has a lot of leverage to sell the same packages that they were selling for $100 for $200 nowadays. I don't think there's any marketing competition whatsoever, Dave. I'm just going to be honest with you. I think there is zero marketing competition for the Vols and the Titans at all. Look at this. The Lions are the best, maybe the best team in the NFC this year. That didn't stop Michigan from having enough NIL money to go win a championship.
Yeah. Nah. It just makes me wonder if you have that opportunity. Really, it's about eyeballs, I guess.
I know, but I don't think there's limited bandwidth with Titans and Vols. I don't think there's limited bandwidth. Largely because, again, I don't think there's ever a limited bandwidth between the NFL and college teams. I think it just helps if both are good, honestly. So I don't think there's any type of. I just think I just don't think there's as much crossover. Nashville's barely University of Tennessee is the team for born and bred Tennessee Southerners. The Titans are very much like the team for Yankees who moved to Nashville. And I say that as a Titans fan, by the way. And who is not a Yankee, but I didn't move to Nashville, but the Titans are you see Nashville's barely a Southern city at this point. Most of Nashville's people from the East Coast and New York who moved there. And that's who the Titans fan base is.
Yep. You are right on that. Don Self, he is your State Farm agent right there in Chattanooga, also Ottawa. And he can take care of you in Collegedale. Right down there, donself.net. Check them out, donself.net, or call 423-396-2126. That's 423-396-2126, donself.net. Certainly appreciate him. So with that being said, as the whole SEC and Big Ten adapt, how does that change your viewpoint on maybe where even Tennessee should recruit nowadays?
I think Tennessee's recruiting is going to be similar as it always is. It's NIL and then just those regions. So I don't think anything changes with that.
I would like to see Tennessee in the Carolinas more. That would be my hope. And I'm curious why they're not there more. And we've talked to Giroux about this. Where would you be if you're Tennessee and you've got a new directive?
Are they not in the Carolinas? They just got Braylon Staley out of South Carolina. So I think they're fine on that. I really don't think there's an issue with how they're recruiting right now, quite honestly. So in terms of regions, I think they're just missing out on players a lot of times.
So if you're a Tennessee fan, are you happy right now with where Tennessee's recruiting?
No, but that has nothing to do with their recruiting method. That has nothing to do with their recruiting method. That has to do with they're just missing on guys right now because there's some other issues going on.
Okay. So tell us about Tennessee's newest commitment. Should the Vols be happy for dipping into Temple, yay or nay?
So this is my hot take. So Tennessee added a commitment, a Temple Owls cornerback, Jalen McMurray. Transfer cornerback, transfer defensive back, started 2 years at the American, redshirted his first year. On the surface, you may be excited. Tennessee needs a defensive back. I'm just going to tell you I'm not that high on Jalen McMurray. I'm much higher on Jamar McCoy, who came from Oregon State. Jalen McMurray, his second year, showed slight regression from his first year. Big red flag when you play in the American. His PFF grade for the season last year was 66.5. Dave, I'm with you. I'm a believer in younger and guys at smaller schools coming up to the bigger schools. But the root of that is they have to be really, really, really good at the smaller schools, right? Like, so, and I'm not seeing that with Jalen McMurray. I think they just wanted a body. I just think they wanted a body.
Okay. Based off what they've lost, is he a credible body? Because they're kind of at the point where you're not going to look up at the board and say, oh, all the guys in red, those are the guys that we really want, but oops, they're already gone somewhere. It's not like you have the pick of the litter at this point. So if he's just a body, as you say, is he just a good enough body to hang around a while?
I mean, maybe, but let's think about this for a minute. Here's my issue with the McMurray pickup. Jamar McCoy, I get. Dude balled out at a high level. The only reason he left Oregon State was because they're not going to be Power 5 next year. McMurray played as a starter at a lower level. Didn't ball out at all. And I question, what is this move for? Did Tennessee get... Because here's the thing. If you're McMurray, Dave, if you're transferring to a big school, aren't you looking to play and to start? So why Tennessee wouldn't be adding him if they're just thinking depth at that point? And I think my issue with this is McMurray. So you have Ricky Gibson III and Jordan Matthews. What is up with those guys? Ricky Gibson III and Jordan Matthews, those are the two elite athletes that they picked up last year at defensive back that I thought would step in at quarterback. You've added Jamar McCoy, and now you've added Jalen McMurray. Are these guys just, Dave, tell me, I don't know what you've heard in the program. Are they not ready? I thought they were going to be ready to go by this time.
Well, I mean, Gibson played quite a bit in the Citrus Bowl. So
that's true. He did.
Yeah. I mean, he played quite a bit. So I think that's one of your guys that's going to be a starter. If you project ahead as far as who's going to be a starter now, it's difficult. And do you think really that Josh Heupel or Tim Banks, do you think they know at this point who they're starting 4 or 5, depending on how you want to look at it, who they're going to be next year? I don't think they do. How many could they name right now that they would say no doubt?
I mean, with Gabe Jeudy-Lally entering the draft, they don't have anybody. They don't have anybody that they know can start next year. That's now secondary wasn't great last year, so I don't think they care. And I think the sign with a lot of the secondary players entering the portal is that, okay, a lot of them entered the portal. So I think that's fine, but yeah, they don't have anybody. They genuinely don't have anybody that could step in. So I think Jalen McMurray, I mean, it could be a depth thing, but okay. So Gabe Julie, they do have about 4 or 5 defensive backs coming in. I'm pretty sure Boo Carter is going to step in at strong safety. I think he's immediately going to step in at strong safety, and Jacoby Thomas will step in from MTSU at free safety. Jacoby Thomas is a pickup I like. That's the type of guy you want. You want somebody who was elite, an elite baller at his lower level. You don't want somebody who's just a starter.
Okay, so you know that I'm not arguing either one of those guys, but we're talking about incoming players. You know, that's not a solid group. If we're talking about 2 of them are probably, that's a lot different than saying going to start. That's a weird position to be in. And I believe what you're saying is probably the likely path, but things happen. Not as big as you thought somebody might be, not ready to play. misses his girlfriend. I mean, it could be any number of things.
So what's your takes on this? Why do you think they added Jalen McMurray?
I think it's exactly what you said. I think it's a body. I mean, my question is it a good enough body, or do you put yourself in a position where you have to run guys regularly? I think that's the scary thing. You can run guys every once in a while, but you don't want to run 5 or 6 guys each and every January. So hopefully he's good enough to stick around, and the guys they bring in that maybe a reach are good enough to stick around, and you're not just bringing in guys that are essentially walk-on players, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think just a body is a big concern because, again, regression. 2022, Jalen McMurray was second-team All-Freshman by College Football News. He entered 2023 preseason All-American Athletic Conference, not preseason All-American, for those who are questioning. Big difference. Didn't get postseason All-American recognition, All-AAC, despite playing the whole year. That suggests underwhelming as a starter and underwhelming at a smaller level. That's a big deal to me. I think you should always be overachieving your expectations at the smaller level if you're going to be coming up to the larger level.
Agreed. No question about it. And you should look pretty darn good. I mean, you should really stand out. Certainly, McAllen Castles was that case. If you went back and looked at any of his tape, he was a jewel. Speaking of jewels, Rick Terry Jewelry Design. They want to be your jeweler. Looking for affordable game day jewelry? How about the Fire Opals, a Tennessee tradition? RickTerryJewelry.com. RickTerryJewelry.com. Tennessee has been in the position to fire people before. So I want to discuss that, if we may, here in 1 second, especially after the Vrabel firing. So stay tuned. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. Stay tuned. This is Off the Hook Sports.
Got cataracts? We can fix that. Never miss another moment. With a little help from Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Haun at cctis.com.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air. Dare to compare.
We believe every day is a good day to be thirsty. With free samples on draft and lots of flavors to choose from, Tennessee Cider Company prepares a hard cider that's easy to enjoy. Some say it's the signature cider of the South. Others say it's the cure to your craving. They all say you'll savor every sip. The area of Gatlinburg has so much to offer, and so does Tennessee Cider Company. Add us to your list for shopping and fun experiences. You'll be glad you made the trip. Find our cidery in the Mountain Mall on the Gatlinburg Parkway. Sip smart. Sip the good stuff. Sip Tennessee Cider Company. Thirsty yet? Doors open at 10 a.m.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
You're listening to The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
The internet is full of pictures of each and every one of you.
Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free.
Is there nothing you people can't do?
Also available on OffTheHookSports.com.
Want to get more to McMurray and Tennessee picking up that player in the portal from Temple. In particular, I have a question about the way Tennessee seems to be handling its defensive back turnover. First, Portions of the program brought to you up by our friends at Sports Treasures. Go to facebook.com. That's facebook.com. Go to Sports Treasures TN. Follow them. And the daily updates are fantastic. I share them as well. That's 5 million Sports Treasures right there in North Knoxville. Sports Treasures. Again, just go to Facebook and follow them there, and you'll be perfectly set up. So, talking about this secondary, one of the things that we haven't discussed much is if they're using guys that are just kind of plug and play guys you can stick anywhere, can you really develop leadership if you're not playing one particular position? I wonder if you thought of that, Caleb, how disconcerting it might be if Tennessee seems to just be looking for a guy to stick in one place who ultimately is the leader of this secondary. You wouldn't want to do that with your skill position players on offense. At cornerback, you certainly wouldn't want to. At quarterback, you wouldn't want to.
No, I think this is more just about. I think the secondary was never going to be a place that's the leader of the defense. Now they do need somebody to lead the secondary, you would think, and I thought Jalen McCullough was that guy. Trey Flowers was that 2 years ago when he was battling injury. But yeah, that is the issue for next year. Is they don't really have anybody that can step in and be the leader. I'm going through the secondary now. Christian Harrison and Jordan Thomas are two very smart players who could fill voids in the secondary. Andre Turrentine had kind of a strong Citrus Bowl, but I'm kind of the mindset that it's because he was playing Iowa, not because he's actually flipped a switch and gotten good.
Probably.
Yeah. Yeah. So I see that with Andre Turrentine. Then you have I believe John Slaughter is still in the program out of South Haven, and he was a freshman this past year. And obviously Ricky Gibson and Jordan Matthews, maybe they could flip a switch. It's possible they were just saving a red shirt for Jordan Matthews. And then Jermon McCoy and Jacoby Thomas, the two newcomers. Obviously, with today, the way the secondary works, you want to be able to go 10 deep. So I think that right now, theoretically, in terms of people I've seen see the field, people they have bringing in, and people I think should emerge, I'm counting at one, there's Andre Turrentine, Ricky Gibson, Jordan Matthews, Jordan Thomas, and I do believe in Christian Harrison. So that's about 5, plus Boo Carter, Jacoby Thomas, Jermon McCoy as incoming players, and maybe Jalen McMurray. I theoretically, and then John Slaughter be added, I theoretically see a way for them to go 10 deep next year, but all unproven. I mean, not one. This is Kentucky getting a bunch of one and dones, but they're all 3 stars instead of 5 stars, and I have no idea what to think of them coming in, except for, again, Boo Carter. Look, maybe Boo Carter just as a freshman emerges into a leader. I mean, maybe he's one of those vocal guys that's just, everybody rallies around.
Yes, and I look at Matthews and Gibson, and if they get a couple of guys that just sort of play, that's not a good look, is it? Those are high 4-star, 5-star guys. Those are the guys you're supposed to turn into superstars. I mean, you don't want to bring 2 of those guys in close together and be like, they did okay.
Yeah, Matthews, I thought should have immediately been a superstar by the middle of the year. I saw Alontae Taylor, Bryce Thompson starting as a freshman with Matthews, and he never emerged. Now, again, maybe they were saving a red shirt by the middle part of the year. That's always possible because they were waiting on next year. But Matthews, I think Matthews is... I judge players by where they come from a lot of times. And I feel like Tennessee usually hits on prospects out of Louisiana. And that's what, particularly 4-star. So it kind of shocked me that Matthews didn't emerge. Kind of like, again, one of the reasons I believe in Braylon Staley, Dave, is that I don't think Tennessee's ever missed on a South Carolina kid. I think everybody that comes out of South Carolina turns out to be really, really good when they go to Tennessee. And I feel the same about Louisiana. And so I think that it's a little shocking to me that Matthews didn't emerge and Gibson did. But again, could be redshirt. I mean, I also know this, and you were the one who told me, NIL was the flip for why Matthews didn't stay home and go to LSU. So Tennessee opened a checkbook to get Jordan Matthews in. That's how much they believed in him. And so it's a red flag that he didn't start in 2023, and then that they've gone and added 2 transfer cornerbacks.
Yeah, it would be troubling And I covered a coach like this, Larry Slade. It may have been before you remember who that was. He was the defensive backs coach. He wasn't well liked, which I thought was unfair because they played so much man. His players were taught to look at the player, not the ball. And there's some similarities with the way that they play a lot of man head up. And I just wonder if some of the coaches like Willie Martinez, they even want to be around, because it seems like they're going to be overly criticized. They could have a very good year if you went and graded them, but because of what the offense does and the way this program's built, a fan might go, yeah, you were just very average, right?
That's exactly what would happen. And that's why people, Dave, you and I are, Willie Martinez and Joey Halzle have caused debates, but the biggest split in Tennessee right now is Tim Banks. People like me and you think he does a phenomenal job, because what he's dealt with and what the offense is what he's asked to do, given what the way the system is built, it's a very, very hard job to be the defensive coordinator at Tennessee. But the other half of Vol Nation wants him fired like tomorrow. And I'm just saying, you're not going to get any better, because no great defensive coordinator is going to want to come to Tennessee to begin with. And two, it doesn't matter who your defensive coordinator is. You're always going to be near the bottom half of the SEC in passing yards allowed. Always, with the way this offense is structured. That's just how it works. And so the question becomes, you can't expect to get great secondary players. The question becomes, can you get competent secondary players to avoid what happened against South Carolina in 2022, where you give up a touchdown every drive?
Very true. I tell you what, it's time to jump in the spa. Are you okay with that? Sound like a good idea, Caleb?
Love the spa.
It's a great way to get the day going. I don't know when you're watching. Maybe it's to end the day. Here we go. It is time for 4 Downs, brought to you by Dynasty Pool and Spas in Athens.
4 Downs, brought to you by Dynasty Spas, the most comfortable spas made in the United States of America, right here in East Tennessee. Drop in for the all-new showroom in Athens. Dynasty Spas, perfect for all 4 seasons. 4 Downs, presented by Off the Hook Sports.
Okay, so the University of Tennessee has had to fire some coaches. There's no question about that. For the record, did you think the firing of Mike Vrabel was a mistake, Caleb Calhoun, being a fan of, or at least a follower and some sort of covering sense of both entities? What did you think of the move to remove Vrabel? I thought it was a mistake from afar, but I don't know them like you.
I thought it was classic blame deflecting by a spoiled little child of a billionaire who runs the Titans franchise.
He never pulls the punches, ladies and gentlemen. What should we do?
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
Thank you. That was very good. I like that. All right. Which down is this, Coop?
Coop here. First down.
The most regrettable fire that Tennessee has ever made is blank.
This was a tough one for me. Because because Tennessee has gotten significantly worse after some fires. But a lot of those times it's because of the bad hires they made after the fire, not necessarily because of the fire itself. So I'm going to go out on a limb and do a hot take. And I'm going to say the most regrettable fire was Bruce Pearl, because they could have fought for him and maybe won that case.
You know, you get up, you go to that 3:45 a.m. production meeting to avoid these moments. I was going to say Bruce Pearl as well. I think he could have lied about 3 more times and probably still just had like a 3.5 game suspension. I think he would have been fine, and he would have come back and he would have been Tennessee's coach. And it's not right. And Tennessee got scared because you don't ever stand up for basketball when football's right here. And I got it at the time. I thought he's not going to make this, and he didn't. And I understood why, and I don't think you can lie to your employer. I think that's a terrible thing to do, and he did that. But, man, nowadays, if Jim Harbaugh's been suspended half the season.
Exactly. And Michigan comes out and is like, nope, we're sticking with them no matter what. They easily could. And also, the violation that Pearl lied about is no longer a violation. That's the funny part about it. So I think they could have kept Pearl. I think now they're probably fine with Rick Barnes, but they had to go through. Look, I remember. I don't want to get too deep into it, but Quanzo Martin. I don't think he's a bad coach, but he was compared to Pearl, the worst type of hire you can have, because Quanzo Martin is all defense and half court offense and slow it down and win games in the 60s. Coming off Pearl's like up tempo press, full court press for 40 minutes, 40 minutes. That's the worst thing you could give fans in that moment. So it's so unless he was winning at a high level, which he wasn't, he was kind of a perennial NCAA tournament bubble team. That was just the worst type of hire, and it just made the Pearl firing look that much worse.
Yeah, and there were some goofballs that tried to stir it up and make it up I thought a racial issue at the points too, but that's a whole different story. But I thought great to work with. Conzo was, and he's had success since he's left Tennessee. I don't think there's any question he's a solid coach, right?
Yeah, he's a solid coach. He stresses defense. He doesn't even bother to work on the offensive side, though, a lot of times. I mean, it's almost like he's the Lincoln Riley, but for defense and basketball.
All right. What down, Coop?
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
All right. If Tennessee could go back and not fire Philip Fulmer, what would there have success been over the 2010s? Are they playing for any championships? Are they still falling apart? Because I believe if the Titans keep Vrabel, they're going to be still competing to get in the playoffs. And that means you're competing to win a championship, theoretically. I think Tennessee would do that in a 12-team tournament.
I think Tennessee... You know why this is such a hard question? Would Fulmer have you? Okay, I'll ask you this. You were tied to the program. If Fulmer had not been fired, do you think Dave Clawson is still gone after 2008? Do you think he's at least fired? Do you think Fulmer's moving on from Dave Clawson after 2008? Do you think that 1-year experiment is done?
Oh, yes. Yes. So you're saying that Fulmer gets a chance, but he says you got to say goodbye to that other dude, that guy, that DC guy.
Do you think? Well, what I'm saying is, I think Fulmer actively himself chooses to fire Dave Clawson, doesn't he?
I think the janitor knew that was going to be a wise move.
Okay, so
I don't think that was ever discussed.
Here's the thing: if that happens, depending on who they get, I think Tennessee plays for at least one more SEC championship, because you know this, Dave. I know this. People are forgetting the quarterbacks that were interested in Tennessee while Fulmer was still there. They could have Taj Boyd, Bryce Petty, Cam Newton. All three of them were interested in Tennessee. Now, Cam Newton, they probably don't get, because I don't think they were going to open up the checkbook at that time. But they already had Bryce Petty and Taj Boyd ready to go. And those were two really good college quarterbacks. And so I think just a good college quarterback like that is enough for you to compete for another SEC title, isn't it? If you get the right hired offensive coordinator.
One of those guys would have changed the recent history of the SEC, and you mentioned his name. Portions of the program brought to you by Andy Mason, AndyMasonRealEstate.com, over 40 years of experience. Also, there in North Knoxville, enjoy life better when you see better. Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Haun, local vision service for LASIK, cataract surgery, and regular eye examination. CCTeyes.com. CCTeyes.com. When I look at guys that have been fired over the years, if you were to go back, would Philip Fulmer have played for one or two more? Yeah, I think you would, but eventually you would have to make a change. And it's interesting to think about how that change might have gone. The guy that I was referencing that would have changed the course of SEC football history would have been Cam Newton. Tennessee didn't want to recruit him because they thought maybe he might be trouble off the field. I know that from a very good source who recruited him at the time. What if Tennessee's riding high with Philip Fulmer, who they stick with, is Cam Newton a Vol? I know he loved Tennessee. That is not a reach at all to say that he would have played for Tennessee. If you want to talk about crazy time history, that could have happened.
Yeah, but look, the only problem is, and I've never put this on Cam Newton, but his father was shopping him around. And we know that now verifiably.
And
Do you think Tennessee would have obliged?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I know that he was shopping him around, but that got out. Usually it doesn't get out. So maybe it doesn't get out.
That's true.
It doesn't get out every time. We didn't know about this dude was making that and that guy was. That was the weird part about that story. It was like, how did that get out? And I still don't remember actually how did it get out?
I think somebody from Mississippi State leaked it because Mississippi State here's all that happened. This Auburn never got caught. What we know is that Mississippi State offered him $100,000. And what everybody is saying is, well, if Mississippi State offered this, he obviously went somewhere else. He didn't just go to Auburn for free then. That's what we pieced it together. So somebody from Mississippi State was upset that he didn't go to Mississippi State, I think, and they leaked that out. So that's kind of the story.
I was told that the magic number was 185,000. Just for the record, I don't know if that's the case, but that was the number that I was told.
Can we safely say if Fulmer stays at Tennessee, Dabo Swinney does not have a Hall of Fame career at Clemson?
Well, how about we do that?
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here, 3rd down.
What kind of career does Dabo have if Philip Fulmer manages to resurrect things at Tennessee? I agree with you. It's not a championship contending program year in and year out. No way.
No, not at all. Because what happened? How did Dabo build Clemson? Taj Boyd came and he started, and Taj Boyd by himself was enough to be the best player in the ACC. So in the weak ACC, which was why Clemson kind of propelled itself to a top 20 program. And Dabo propelling Clemson to a top 20 program gave him enough credibility to start out recruiting Tennessee and other places. If Dabo Swinney doesn't have Taj Boyd, Dave, Dabo Swinney might get fired in 2012. I'm just going to give it to you straight. Taj Boyd to Sammy Watkins is what made Clemson a national brand. By itself, that duo by itself made Clemson a national brand, which was enough for Dabo Swinney to be able to recruit. So I think Dabo Swinney at best is just Tommy Bowden. And honestly, I think if Clemson had stuck with Tommy Bowden, they still probably have the same run they had because, again, they got the run at the expense of Tennessee's fall.
Okay, so what 3 programs, give me 3, do you think benefit the most or have benefited during Tennessee's recent struggles and should hope that the prognosticators like me who thinks that Tennessee is going to be a perennial, at least contender to make it in the college football playoff. I'm not saying they'll make it, but they're going to be there every year, in my opinion, on the inside, very close or right on the outside. So what 3 programs should hope that we're wrong? Those that think that Tennessee is going to be a top 10-ish type program again.
Well, Clemson is at the top.
Others?
The other South Carolina school is number 2.
Okay.
I think South Carolina's epic runner. Now here's the thing: does Tennessee need South Carolina to be bad, or does South Carolina need Tennessee to be bad? It kind of goes one way or the other. But South Carolina under Steve Spurrier had their best run when Tennessee was at its worst. So, and then number 3, I would say is probably. I'm going to go, and this is going to be out of left field one, but I'm actually going to go Kentucky. Because I think Kentucky, it can be a bowl team when Tennessee's really, really bad, which they have been over the past 10 years, because they can maybe get every now and then a player out of, I don't want to say Randall Cobb because there was a specific way that happened, but they might get a player or 2 away from Tennessee with Mark Stoops. And so it just enough for them to be a bowl team and not a perennial 3-9 team.
I'm going to go with Daniel, who says Clemson, Georgia, and South Carolina. And obviously, you beat Georgia for anybody. That's huge, but that would be monstrous to be able to do that. But certainly, Clemson should be wary. If you go back and look at the guys they've got, it seemed like their entire receiver core in one of those national championship games was nothing but guys that played either in East Tennessee or loved Tennessee. And even Trevor Lawrence loved Tennessee. There's no question that Clemson.
Trevor Lawrence throwing to T. Martin's son and T. Higgins from Oak Ridge.
That's what it would have been with a very average coach. If you would add the top 25% of coaches in the nation, that's what you got going.
Also, I want to address Georgia, though, because people keep saying Georgia cashed in on Tennessee falling. Y'all are going chicken to the edge. You're looking at it backwards. I think Tennessee cashed in on Georgia being down in the 90s. Georgia doesn't need Tennessee to be down. Tennessee needs Georgia to be down more than the other way around because Georgia is just a more fertile recruiting ground. I'm sorry. It's easier to win at Georgia than it is at Tennessee. It just is.
Okay, so Tennessee needs Georgia to be down more than
Georgia needs Tennessee to be down.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Completely agree with that. You want Ray Goff to get rehired in some shape, form, or fashion. Kirby, you feeling tired? Because Ray Goff's right there chomping at the bit, ready to go.
By the way, speaking of really bad coaches, was it Travis who tagged us on Twitter yesterday about Tennessee, the Titans hiring Butch Jones, which just like that's something Amy Adams Strunk would probably do. They probably have similar levels of intelligence.
Oh, don't say that about anybody, including Butch Jones. That's like an insult to Butch Jones just to say he has the intelligence of Butch Jones. Have you seen did you see the thing, the latest like he was going to intro and he was one of the coaches in the national championship thing that was going around. They did a intro for him. That guy is he's the easiest person to make fun of all time, is he not?
He is. So what was more pathetic? What's the more pathetic scene this year? Because this saved Butch Jones. Butch Jones wearing a bowl-bound shirt for Arkansas State going 6-6, or LeBron and the Lakers raising a banner for the in-season tournament championship for the NBA?
I don't know. They seem to both look very odd. It never looks odd when you're there at Dynasty Pools and Spas. They bring you 4 downs. Love it right there. The showroom in Athens. Check them out. Then they'll deliver to you. That's Dynasty Pools and Spas. DynastySpas.com. Showroom is unbelievable. Amazing discounts for first responders, military, some blemish models that can save you a ton. So certainly check them out. They bring you 4 downs. Yeah, there are some guys that just seem to fit the goofy mold. Isn't he one? And maybe I've been too hard on Eli Drinkwitz. Do you think Eli Drinkwitz ends up being like a really successful coach? Because I did base it off how he looks goofy, and that makes me feel superficial and bad.
I mean, we stand on business. Josh handshake is one of the most like.
Stand on business. So it's okay.
And he rehearsed it.
It's okay. It's okay as long as I'm making fun of people that think like you do. As long as we both find it funny, then we can go ahead and jump in there. Other regrettable firings in the SEC. We get to 4th down right now.
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. 4th down.
All right. What's a bad firing in the SEC?
I think historically, I got a few, and I want you to give me your thoughts. You can even get Hank Kingsley on here for me if you tell me what I think on these.
I can do that. So that's your approval.
All right. So I'm naming them. Yes. I'm actually going to name them. I'm not going to say they are regrettable, but I'm going to see your thoughts when I go. So I'll stay on Tennessee first, and I'll go to basketball.
That's hot.
What do you think of the firing of Jerry Green? Regrettable?
Oh,
that's crazy.
Why would you even think that was regrettable? You had no choice. He got on statewide radio and made fun of you as an athletic director and as an athletic program.
The only reason
while you had about 15 martinis in him. I mean, what are you supposed to do?
He at the time, it was just funny because he had the most successful 4-year run in Tennessee basketball history, and then they hired Buzz Peterson afterward, which was so horrible.
Does anybody remember that? That was a drive off the side of the road situation when I heard that driving home that night. I mean, literally.
All right, one more for Tennessee before I get out of Tennessee. Here's a controversial one. What about Johnny Majors in 92? Does Tennessee have the same success under Majors in the mid-90s that they had under Fulmer?
I will say that, yes, they also win one. I'm not going to say more or less, but I'll say they win one. And I wondered if we've worked together for over a year now, and you've never asked me that. And I go back and forth. You might ask me tomorrow, and I might have a different answer. But I'm curious what the people in the message board think, those that might be a little bit older like me. Do you think Majors wins one because they had talent coming out of their ears?
And he had the program rolling at that point, which is true. Do you think and one more, sorry, I got to go to the other coaches, but I just have to ask you this last one. Do you think to a degree, at least, however people feel about whether Majors was wronged or he should have been fired, do you think Majors deserves some blame for his own firing with how he handled things?
An absolute ton.
Okay. Yeah. So you think he did a lot of it to himself?
No question. He was overly confident, and I think he admitted that to a lot of people close to him in his later years. But I think it's good that chapter closed. I'm glad it did, because you were afraid it was going to just stay an open wound, and that was pretty rough. So serious topic there. Hit the like and subscribe button. But I loved him, man. Well, we could probably go back and pull up old Johnny Majors shows and laugh forever. Do you remember watching those back? He'd beat on the desk and stuff.
I was 4. Of course, I don't remember it. All right, so I got it. All right, so bring it up again. Here's a regrettable firing. I'm going to say he's a very regrettable one, Dave. Dan Mullen. I think Florida, that is a very regrettable firing. They fired him for one bad year, but I think they would take him back in a heartbeat.
You know, it's funny you say that. I thought he was a slam dunk hire. I like an offensive coach, and I like the fact that you're at a school that really the recruiting should be taken care of for you. Man, the question is, would he want that job?
Well, should they have fired him to begin with, though? He was there for 4 years, and let me tell you why they fired him. They fired him because at one point they asked him about recruiting, and he said, "I'm not here to address recruiting in season. I'm focused on the season. I'll address recruiting in the off season." And people got mad at him for saying that.
I don't know. I wonder, how long has it been since he's been a head coach?
2021. They hired Billy Napier right after Dan Mullen.
Okay. So he's turned down some smaller jobs. Maybe he just doesn't like recruiting and stuff anymore.
That might be it.
I mean, if you sit it out, usually you don't.
But wait, Spurrier didn't like recruiting. Spurrier hated recruiting, but he was still able to win because he could just get players in Florida, and he could out scheme you.
Yeah, I think that's a special place. I think that's one of those jobs that you want.
But that's where Mullen was.
Yeah, it just went. It just doesn't seem like he wants to get out there and even work as hard as Spurrier at it. I don't know. It just seemed. If he wanted another job, wouldn't he go get another job?
Maybe, but maybe he didn't want to get fired by Florida either. I mean, I just know that the story of Spurrier with Emmitt Smith. Spurrier is not a salesman at all, because Emmitt Smith was wondering whether or not he should stay at Florida in 90, and he went to Spurrier, and Spurrier's like, well, just make your decision so I can know what to do with my running backs. That's all he said. So that's so. Are you going regrettable, or are you saying not regrettable?
Well, no, if you don't win, Florida is one of those jobs in Tennessee if you're not very, very close to winning a championship when I hire you, within 4 or 5 years, if you're not knocking on the door for a national championship, I am going to be looking for another coach. And it's just a matter of time until I can find one. If you're one of those top 15 jobs, in Tennessee, to me, is one of those jobs.
So you're going to say that's crazy. Okay. I'll go to the next one then. Auburn firing Gus Malzahn.
Oh, yeah, I did forget to say.
That's crazy.
Auburn firing Gus Malzahn?
Yeah.
Was it that as much as it was him wanting to leave, or was it both?
I think he didn't like how he was treated by Auburn fans over the years. I think he thought he wasn't getting the respect he deserved for what he had done for the program. And he flirted with leaving a lot because of that, but never actually left. I'm
going to go with this.
Hey now.
I think that was a good move for both parties. It didn't seem like they liked each other at the time.
All right, so you don't think that was a regrettable one? All right, here's an easy regrettable one, and you have to agree with me on this. Ole Miss firing David Cutcliffe. Most regrettable firing, I think, of all time.
I think it was, and you know why, right?
Because he wouldn't fire the staff.
Yeah, they wanted him to fire everybody pretty much on his staff. And let's remember, this is a different day and age of football, guys. I know you think that nowadays the assistants for the University of Washington make $400,000 and they just coach inside the linebackers. So you understand all that, and that you're like, oh, well, he's doing fine. Well, when I was around way back in the day, some of those guys were just making $70,000 a year. So to see a lot of those coaches build a little bit more stability has been interesting. Your thoughts on the college football playoff and ESPN deal?
So reporting out. College Football Playoff and ESPN have reached a deal to extend their contract for 6 years. They haven't reached a deal. They're negotiating. So this would go past 2026 to 2032. This means a lot of things. One, it means this SEC Big Ten breakoff that we've been talking about, Dave, isn't happening in 2 years like I thought. NCAA is still going to hang around for about 8 more years in terms of being relevant because you can't break off when you got the deal with the College Football Playoff. It also means, and I'm going to give you the floor because to you, Dave, this might bolster your debate because Dave and I, for those who don't know, have been in a debate for a while. I think the SEC got fleeced by ESPN because they're in a 10-year, $3 billion deal, whereas the Big Ten is in a 7-year deal worth $7 billion, so more than twice as much. However, Dave's point was that being associated with ESPN carries intrinsic value that you can't just measure in raw numbers up front. Well, if ESPN gets the deal with the CFP, there could be the argument that that's an intrinsic value for the SEC being tied to ESPN because maybe the selection committee at that point, if it comes down to an SEC or Big Ten team on the fringe, they put the SEC team in. So I'll give Dave the floor.
You can't tell me there's not going to be a Big Ten SEC beeper like back in the day, maybe from Friday, that there's not going to be a beeper that if it comes down to a Big Ten and SEC game and that particular network has those rights, there's not a little beeper where it goes, uh-oh, this guy believes it should be an SEC team and he writes a really, really big check. Have we told you how big the check is? I think we should listen to him. I'm just saying, I think there's going to be way more money divvied out when it's all said and done. And I think ESPN is going to be the godfather in how that money's divvied out. That's just my hunch. Nobody has told me that. But I just get the feeling the way that money is going to be divvied out is still very, very indiscernible at this point.
If that's the case, again, it's 700 million for the Big Ten to 300 million for the SEC. They got to make up 300 million a year with just this little favorable treatment for a couple of extra teams in the CFP. Maybe it happens. It's possible it does because I would assume. And Dave, you may know more about this. I would assume, like if an SEC team gets into the playoff, if your conference gets more teams into the playoffs, that's more revenue for your conference to split, right? The school doesn't just keep all of that. I would assume.
No, it primarily it's split evenly in the bigger conferences. Some of the smaller conferences, you take home more if you make it as opposed to not, or it's divvied out more if you're in a bigger bowl than everybody else.
So I want to address on a overall. So this is the good news for ESPN, for SEC from a business decision. From an ethical perspective, is it appropriate that ESPN has this deal with the SEC when they're also carrying the College Football Playoff, which will select teams from the SEC and a bunch of other conferences to get in? Is that ethical or appropriate?
No, none of this is ethical or appropriate. Elias pointed it out, and I was about to bring it up. You beat me to it. It feels crooked. And now ESPN has their own sports book. Excuse me. Now I am going to get on my soapbox, said the old man. No, it's not ESPN having their own sports book. It's a sports book having their own television network. That's what it is. Eventually, it's going to be run by these FanDuels and all of that. So that whole part is all intertwined beyond what I think you can even imagine at this point, Caleb.
Yeah, that's fair. The ESPN, and I've talked about gambling, getting involved in sports. I think that here's the truth of the matter. Sports sports is like we always talk about the NCAA was called blindsided by NIL and all of this. You know, sports in general was caught blindsided by the legalization of sports gambling across the country, and they were not prepared with how to embrace it. And we're seeing that consistently. I'm very much, and I think you are too, Dave. I'm very much a believer that if you so much as sniff betting at all on a sport you're playing, lifetime ban. I would say you don't even get your pension if you play professional sports at that point. I think Calvin Ridley should never be allowed to touch a football again, and I think he should have his pension cut too. I don't think you should. Betting on the sport is the biggest crime you can possibly make. And
I agree with that, but I bet you it's already happened. And I bet you
I'm
it's
sure
a
it
big
has.
name, and I bet you they found a way to cover it up, like Michael Jordan playing minor league baseball in the Alabama area. That was the dumbest thing that I've ever seen in my life. I mean, come on. You think you just said, oh, I want to go from being the greatest basketball player right now walking the face of the earth to the most average AA baseball player you can imagine? No, he was suspended.
Of course he was suspended. Yeah. And look, I'm just going to be honest there. I'm not going to go here, but I am going to mention, just read the details of his father's murder because they're very suspicious, but I don't think he was involved at all. I don't think he had anything to do with Michael Jordan, but it doesn't seem like it was just a random robbery gone wrong, put it that way either. It looked more like an execution of some sort. But yeah, and remember when Michael Jordan did it, that was on the heels of the Pete Rose scandal in '89, where they had to ban Pete Rose for life. And look, and you see people with, it's funny. I see the message we're bringing up FanDuel, like ESPN personalities now. Stephen A. Smith has his own podcast, and it's brought to you by FanDuel. I think the Pat McAfee show now is brought to you by FanDuel. Now they have their own sports books, and I'm thinking, is Congress going to have to get in at some point, Dave, and address this to create the barrier?
I think it's too late. I think that ship has sailed. I think that would be like going to Las Vegas and saying, oh, you need to take those buildings down. Those aren't working. Those don't pass code. You need to take just take those down. I don't think you can go backwards. Can you? I mean, these deals are done. You don't think FanDuel is close to purchasing ESPN? I guarantee you.
Well, I mean, you can go backwards when you don't have to go backwards, but when new businesses crop up, you can address how they operate. I mean, in the late 19th century, the Industrial Revolution, a bunch of new businesses popped up. And then in the early 20th century progressive era with Teddy Roosevelt, they kind of figured out, okay, these new businesses are here. Let's figure out a way to have them operate on a fair playing field. And that happened over a period of 20 years. And we kind of finally got it to a decent place. I feel like you could do the same thing with sports now, with sports gambling and things like that. Now, the question's going to be, okay, here's the big question. What's going to happen when it's NIL? Schools like Tennessee, conferences like the SEC and the Big Ten, schools like Wisconsin, they're under more pressure to generate money than ever before. How soon or how quick are we to seeing a school partner with the sports book for money?
I mean, I would put it 16 and a half months. I mean, it's not going to be long at all. I mean, how are you going to turn that down?
Tennessee football brought to you by FanDuel.
Well, I mean, they decided to take the naming rights away from the Thompson and the Bowling family. So I guarantee you, no offense to Food City, it's a fine establishment. I can always find where I need my fresh goods. But I guarantee you FanDuel could have swooped in and paid a lot more. Not even close. But you wouldn't want that association on campus. You could pick up the phone and call FanDuel and said, hey, this grocery store wants to pay double or wants to pay X. Will you pay double? You know what FanDuel is going to say? You bet.
Yeah.
Boom.
And by the way, they especially want to do that because who does FanDuel want to target? College kids who just turned 21 who don't know what to do with money their parents are giving them.
Yep.
And that's exactly who they're going to go after. And so you can call it immoral, and I agree with you. There's no regulations on this whatsoever. I don't know if you guys saw this, Dave. Speaking of claiming like taxes and stuff like that, did you see that FanDuel was able to write off their giveaways and sports books last year as losses on their taxes?
Nice.
Yeah. So basically what they do is they do these giveaways where they're like, bet $1 on this obvious bet and you get 100. That's how they get you hooked. Well, they claim those as write-offs now. And
so have we determined if there are casinos near the Dallas area where they will be holding SEC Media Days this year? Have we determined that? Because here's Dave Hooker saying, I hope not. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. This has been a presentation of Off the Hook Sports, weekdays, 10 a.m.